folks, Ariel over here. Today I wanted to do just a quick showing you guys how I put together a new compost bin. Plan ahead and have your things where you want them so you can reach them. Anyway, I've done this quite a few times now. This is exactly how my compost bins were made that I used for all 8 years in the old location in the woods. And I already have had 2 of these here since last fall, but they're in the kind of far corner of the property. That was because I didn't really know where we were gonna want them. I wanted to be sure they were out of the way of doing other things as we figured out what else we were doing. So I just put them there. Now that is a pretty out of the way corner. They're also both completely full right now with weeds, vegetable scraps, leaves, grass, all that kind of stuff breaking down. So they're gonna just sit there and do that till next year when they go in the garden. But they're in a, like I said, an out of the way far corner where it would be difficult to access them through the winter to keep adding things. So now that we got some other things set up, like the shop and the barn, I want to have one in a more handy location to put things in the winter. So what this is made out of is obviously old pallets, and tons of people will tell you how to do, building things with free pallets, and they are a pretty cool resource because in most areas you can get them for free. These came from a local farm store. Everywhere I've ever checked, they always are like, oh yeah, out back there's a whole heap, load up as many as you want. This is a zip tie. It's a super long, extra big zip tie. You do not have to use ones this big, but I have found them very handy for doing this because it allows me to very quickly and easily and securely put together a new compost bin wherever I feel like. So I'm just zip tying around the side frame of 2 of these, and those big thick ones, they're just nice because they are so sturdy, and I haven't had this come apart in, like I said, the longest one I had was 8 years, and even with the cold and the weather, that has held. And so just having 4 of those lets me do the whole thing. Now I only have 2 of those left out of my big bag from having built the other ones earlier. And so I'm also going to show you what you can do if you don't have the big monster ones. These are obviously much smaller ones, and they're not long enough to go around, so I'm going to make them longer by connecting 2, just like that. And I suspect that I haven't ever done them with just this lighter weight one, so I suspect that may snap and I'll have to replace it, but I'm not going to town just to get another couple big ones today, so that's going to work. And when your boards are really snug in one spot, you just pick a different spot to zip tie. So this I can tighten from 2 locations because it's 2 zip ties. Anyway, you can see how fast and easy that I could do this, actually put this together faster than I can explain to you what I'm doing. So in just a few minutes, I can have a new completed compost bin that can either stand up for years. Eventually the pallets will usually break down, kind of depending on what quality shape they were in when you started with them. I've used older and newer ones. These are some particularly nice ones, so they might last for a little while. But again, even really old crummy ones that were that way when I first used them lasted me for composting for 8 years. It's an easy way to assemble a bin rapidly wherever you might want to have one, and also very easy to dismantle if you decide you don't want it there. Like I mentioned that I have 2 over in a far corner of the property right now. I will probably take those apart next fall once everything in there is broken down and it goes on the garden, because I don't think I want them there anymore. And I knew that when I put them there, that I probably wouldn't want them there long term. So that's fine. All I have to do is clip a couple zip ties, take the panels apart, or the pallets apart, and move them to wherever else I would like to use them instead, either for another compost bin or whatever else you want your pallets for. So that's a super fast and easy way to build a new compost bin. And I think the pallets work well for this, again, because they're free and they're reused otherwise waste product. But also, as you can see, there is some, even with these, you know, kind of nicer, sturdier ones, there's still air gaps through there, and you want that for compost to be able to get some air movement into the sides. If you live in a really wet climate where it rains a ton, you may want to even set another one or a little bit of tarp on top as a lid. That is not an issue here. We are so dry most of the time that not only does my compost need every bit of rain it gets, it also generally needs me to water it through the summer just so it doesn't turn into just dry, crunchy stuff and stop composting. So for me, an open bin is great, and this gives me approximately a 4 foot by 4 foot square, and that's also pretty good for building a solid pile that will break down. As you can see, it's already snowing here, so, and the snow line, they say it's 100% chance of snowing today. The sun's actually halfway out right now, which is pleasanter than the forecast was calling for. Anyway, so that's all I'm doing for now. Through the winter, kitchen scraps will continue to go in here, anything the chickens don't eat. Burley and Velcro are having their game time. And a lot of this won't really get filled up till next summer, but it's in a handy location. You can't see it, but I'm just off the side of the chicken barn. So anything I muck out of there in the spring will probably go in here, and so on, and then whatever goes in here will get used not next fall, but the year after. I've done videos on composting before. There are lots of different ways to do it. If you're trying to get a specific kind of microbial community, you can manage that pretty specifically. If you're trying to get a specific nutrient content, you can manage that fairly specifically. There are lots of people out there with lots of tutorials on all the do's and don'ts and how to for those things. If you just want to take all of your weeds, grass clippings, leaves, cardboard, paper, I use humanure from the composting toilet, you know, chicken poop, all of that stuff, and you want to turn it into something useful rather than have it be a waste product, you can also just pile it all in here as you get it, let it sit for a year or so. It would probably happen faster in warmer and humider climates, but for us it's about a year, and it turns into a wonderful additive for your soil with no turning, no worrying about what you can and can't add, as long as it's some kind of organic material. Basically anything that's not plastic goes in here for me. And it turns into a useful product instead of waste or trash. And no, it's not a, you know, microbe specific, though there are plenty of microbes in it. It's not a nutrient specific way of composting, though there are plenty of nutrients in it. But it is sure the lazy person's way of doing it and not having waste, because it will give you beautiful, nutritious compost to add to your soil, and a beautiful cat perch. And I ignore all the, I've heard you can't put this in the compost, and you can't put diseased plants in the compost, and you can't put onion peels in because, or orange peels because worms won't like them. I don't know, maybe if you fed worms just orange peels and onion peels, they would die. But I have kept worms in containers in the house before I had my tiny house for years, and in the compost pile for many years since. They have always consumed and decomposed all of those things with no issue. So basically, if it came from any kind of thing that ever grew or breathed, plant, tree, animal, etc., it goes in here. If you have a lot of predators, the one thing I did not put in when I lived in my old location was anything that was like a meat scrap. That was only because I didn't want to attract any potential large carnivorous predators, because as you probably know, I had lots of bears, mountain lions, wolves, that kind of thing in the area. Here, where that's not really an issue, our biggest predator seems to be a raccoon. Meat scraps, which there usually isn't any of because these two eat them all, but anything like feathers left after butchering, all that stuff goes in here, and it creates wonderful compost. But anyway, that's getting onto a whole nother topic. That's how in like 5 minutes you can put together a new compost bin that's also easy to relocate if you decide you later want it in a new spot. So hopefully that inspires some of you, and it cost me the cost of a couple zip ties and the time to go pick up some free pallets. Hopefully that's useful. And I never realized what curious critters chickens are. Anything new, like a new compost bin in a new place, means everyone's got to come check it out and peck at everything. Over here at Fineth, thank you so much for watching these videos and spending some of your very valuable time choosing to do that. We hope you found something that was useful, educational, helpful, maybe save someone else some time and trouble, or just something just plain beautiful. If you don't want to miss any videos, subscribe and hit the bell. And thanks for coming along on our journey as we build a new little homestead with our tiny house and everything to come.